Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, Opie discovered his wife's emotional affair with the father of their son's best friend during their son's birthday party. The wife had arranged for the man and his son to stay at their house. Suspicious behavior and late-night encounters led to the revelation that the wife had slept with the man multiple times. He confronted his wife, leading to her tearful departure and a subsequent divorce. The son chose to stay with him. The ex-wife expresses remorse during visitations, and he eventually remarries, finding a better spouse. Now let's get into the story. I suspected my wife was more excited than normal for our 13-year-old son's birthday party. I didn't know it at the time, but she was having an emotional affair with the father of our son's best friend weeks before the party. She arranged for the father and son to come stay at our house for 3 nights since they'd moved out of town over the summer and our son needed his best friend to attend his birthday party. She was acting super happy and pleased with herself. After the arrangements were made, I asked her why she was exceptionally excited, and she thought I was being silly and said I should be just as excited for her son's birthday. She was on her phone a lot before the party, but my wife was usually on Facebook or TikTok. On the day the father and son arrived at her house, she was dressed nicely. She always was, but I could tell she went the extra mile for some reason. The first night with the man in her house, I stayed awake until 4 a.m. or so, but eventually crashed. By the time I woke up, my wife was out of bed, and I was really upset about it. I stumbled out of our room in my robe and found them sitting at the dining room table. The kids weren't up yet, and they were eating breakfast my wife made. I glared at them awkwardly. She greeted me super nicely, as if that would assure me everything was fine. We played some games with the kids and took them to the park. I talked with the guy a little. His wife passed away a year ago. He and his son were evicted from the home they rented for years, and the only place he could find to rent was out of town. I thanked him for bringing his son to the party, and he thanked me for sharing my home. He didn't thank me for sharing my wife because he didn't want me to know that part. The next night, I felt a little more at ease, assuming I built some trust and respect with the dude. After we all went to bed, I fell asleep early and slept the whole night through the next morning. My wife and the guy were sitting together at the table again. They sat with their faces inches from each other like they were about to kiss. I grunted a good morning, and they both jumped as I caught them. My wife broke the awkwardness by announcing we needed to start decorating for the party. Before we knew it, party guests started to arrive amongst the yelling of children and joyful screams. I lost track of my wife and the dude. When it was time for the cake, I started looking for them. They weren't in any obvious room in the house, so eventually I opened the laundry room door. I found my wife sitting on the dryer, straddling the man between her legs. She was wearing a skirt, and it was pulled up pretty high. My wife yelled, pushed him away, and jumped off the dryer. She asked me what was up and if it was time to do the cake. I stared at her like she was crazy, and it took her a few painful seconds to ask me if I saw what just happened. I said yes and demanded an explanation while I stared down both of them. Her hands flew up to cover her mouth. She started crying and said she would explain it all to me, but pleaded with me to wait until after our son's party was over, since I was unexpectedly about to discover something my wife intended to keep from me. My blood was boiling. I told her I would not wait and that we were going to talk about this right now. I grabbed her hand, dragged her into her bedroom, and shut the door. I told her to start talking and tell me everything. She started by saying that it was supposed to be a one-time thing and she could never bring herself to do it again, no matter how much he needed it. I was blown away. I asked her what she was talking about, and she admitted she slept with the guy twice last night and yesterday morning. He told her he needed it more than he could stand because they'd been talking about having intimate and building it up for months, ever since last school year when our son and his son were playing football together. They started texting, sexting, and talking on the phone, She begged me for forgiveness, but I was too busy processing this information to hear her. She'd been having an emotional affair for half of the year, talking to this guy about having intimate with him until she arranged for him to sleep in our house and finally made it happen. I told her if she didn't leave the house immediately, I would tell everyone attending our son's party to leave. Of course, I probably wouldn't have done this, but it convinced her to start packing a few things. I stormed out of our room to confront the homewrecker, only to find he was gone. I looked for his son among the blissful party guests, and he was gone. None of the kids noticed anything happening. They were distracted by a movie. Before my wife left, I told her I didn't want to see her again until she was ready to sign divorce papers. She fell to her knees and cried, begging my forgiveness. I told her she was making a fool of herself, and the only way our family could have stayed together, as if she would have kept her pants on and wits about her. I told her I would tell our son that grandma was having some trouble and needed her to help around the house for a few days. She cried harder, but after weighing her options, she got up and somberly drove to her parents' house. I'd like to say our son handled the separation and divorced well, but I can tell it hurt him. He chose to stay with me in the family home. This broke his mother's heart, but she knows she has no one to blame but herself. After 18 years of marriage, she chose to give herself away right under my nose. After the short-lived affair, her lover refused to see her again out of remorse. Whenever I see her for visitation with our son, she looks at me like she still loves me. She expresses her regret and wishes for me to find a better wife than her. Well, all her wishes must have paid off because I did remarry and she is better than my ex. I know she stopped wishing for my sake and switched to more self-centered wishing. Today's second story. In this story, Op's wife confessed to having an affair with her therapist after months of strained communication in their marriage. He discovered the infidelity through extensive snooping and confronted his wife, who admitted to the affair but expressed a desire to continue it while staying married. He is conflicted, considering the possibility of an open relationship and questioning the therapist's involvement in what appears to be a secretive and potentially manipulative organization. Despite feeling disturbed, he is torn between filing for divorce and exploring unconventional options suggested by his wife. Now let's get into the story. About 4 days ago, my wife consummated an affair she's been having with her therapist for the past 7 months. I can't fit all the background story I wanted to share here, but if there's interest, I'll post the full story to a blog or something. 3 months ago, she cut off close relation and told me I didn't deserve it anymore and I had to earn the right. I found myself in a dead bedroom. As time went on, I kept attempting to talk things through with her. I was starved of intimacy, touch, reassurance, help around the house, everything. She suddenly stopped doing anything related to our relationship or household. I felt betrayed. I was convinced that there was more to it, but she kept explaining things away, redirecting the questions, changing facts, etc. I regularly prompted her to please be open and honest with me so we could work things out, but I was exhausting her. She never had time for me and always had higher priority things to focus on. Her resentment of me grew, and she was openly hostile to me at that point. Then she scheduled a trip to go on a women empowerment event, females only, and I knew in my heart what was happening. She had found a cover story that she knew I wouldn't argue with. I couldn't sleep, so I snooped through her accounts again. I went through the phone records and search history. I purchased a background search service so I could find out which numbers were whose. There was a suspicious number, so I decided to give it a call. And sure enough, the name on the voicemail was none other than her therapist. I did a background search and discovered he lived in the same town she booked the hotel on the second night of her trip. I accessed her search history and put together a timeline of events, of conversations we had compared to her very disturbing search results and various other findings. All of my fears were confirmed, even worse than I imagined. She was researching how marriages turn out with your therapist and how to document evidence to prepare for a divorce. She stalked him and his family, did background checks on them, researched how to hide assets during divorce, how to catfish someone if a therapist could lose their license if they had close with a client. The list of things went on. She Googled this man nearly every day. The evidence was undeniable. She absolutely loved this man and was stalking him the day before her trip 5 days ago. She searched how to not fart during intimate. All the pieces were there, and I knew exactly what was going on. I sent her a text message Sunday morning outlining all of the things I knew that were going on. I called out her AP by name and said she needed to come clean if she had any desire to fix our relationship. She returned Sunday, a day early. She demanded to know where I got this information from, but I withheld it and told her that where I got it from was not important, and I held my ground. I didn't want to give her the opportunity to obfuscate, twist, deny, or reason with any of the evidence. Eventually, she spilled all the information described in detail how they had closed. She told me she wanted to continue on with the affair to see where things go, but also wanted to continue her marriage with me because she loves me. I'm sickened. I'm horrified. But for some reason, I can't help but think, maybe I should try to have an open relationship. Maybe it'll be fun, even. Please, someone, shake me out of this idiotic line of thinking. After some intense hours of her sharing and telling me everything, the more I think about it, the crazier this all sounds. Apparently, her therapist is a leader of a group of men that go out into the woods, where sexual male empowerment sessions, which are secretive, and they are not allowed to say what goes on there. Instead of my wife attending the female version of this, she attended the graduation ceremony of the male session, where each guy got on stage and told his emotional story. Then the family members came on stage to give testimonials of how the man's life improved after joining this group. Starting to sound like a cult, by the way. Like a little girl got on stage to say, "My daddy is different now. I like him better now." It just so happens that my wife was sat down unknowingly to the top leader of the group, who said to the person in the row in front of them, if only there was a female version of this group. And my wife jumped on the opportunity to say, "Oh, there is." As a matter of fact, I skipped the session this week to support AP here today. The leader guy said, "Oh, really? Would you mind speaking about it and sharing information with some people here?" So they put her up on stage to talk about this woman's empowerment session she had never even attended before. I could just be paranoid. But now I get the feeling her therapist recruits vulnerable women for this organization and indoctrinates them to take advantage of them sexually. I can't prove that I'm at a loss. On one side, I'm deeply disturbed and upset by my wife's actions. On the other side, I think she was taken advantage of, manipulated, and coached by her therapist, and I could report him to the board to have his license revoked. My wife said she did not want me to do that, and it would make her miserable to know she was the reason for his life falling apart. She wants to have an open marriage and talks about having threesomes and participating in some potentially really fun and interesting intimate. She was able to seduce me when she got back, and the intimate was pretty good. So here I am being a sucker, contemplating not filing for divorce so I don't have to deal with all of that.